Welcome back, everyone. We're going to start our afternoon with a very important presentation that I'm proud to say is from my zoo, the Detroit Zoo. We are going to learn about sensory inclusion and accessibility from Dr. DeAndrea Matthews, our Director of Diversity and Community Engagement. So thank you for taking the time to share with us today so that we can all learn more about this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I do have slides to share with you this afternoon. So as Ellen mentioned, our topic today is on sensory inclusion and accessibility. I am DeAndrea Matthews, and I'm the Vice President of Diversity and Community Engagement at the Detroit Zoological Society. Okay, let's see. So I always like to share with those who may not be familiar with our locations or our mission. So the Detroit Zoological Society operates both the Detroit Zoo as well as the Belle Isle Nature Center. And you can see our purpose is to ignite positive change for animals and nature. Our vision is, of course, to be a force for positive change in a world where animals and nature are valued, understood, and protected by all people. And then our mission is to create meaningful connections between people, animals, and the natural world so all can thrive. So today's presentation will include how we can make those meaningful connections so that everyone can have an enjoyable experience. I want to start with telling you a little bit about me. So I am a National Diversity Council certified diversity professional. I am also a certified disability recruiter. And I am honored to be on the board of the Association of Midwest Museums that has a regional impact. There are 8 states that are part of our region. I am also on the AZA Diversity Committee. This is my 2nd year on the Diversity Committee, and I have 1 more year in my term on that committee. I'm also a part of the Minorities in Aquarium and Zoo Sciences, as well as the Association of Minority Zoo and Aquarium Professionals. So that's just a little bit about me and what I bring to this conversation today. So as far as what I'm going to go over with you in the time that we have together, I am going to talk about some of the differences between sensory inclusion and being sensory friendly. I'll also talk about the 8 sensory categories. I know many of you are familiar with our 5 senses, but we're going to talk about 8 sensory categories today. A little bit on practical application, like how can we use the information that we have about our senses, about sensory categories to help make that, again, a welcoming and inclusive environment and help everyone to have as wonderful of a time as possible visiting our locations. I'll talk a little bit about accessibility and then highlight some of the accessibility assets that we have at the Detroit Zoo and Belle Isle Nature Center. I always like to give some statistical information. So as you can see on the screen, talking about sensory inclusion and accessibility is a relevant topic because 1 in 4 adults in the United States has some type of disability, according to the CDC or the Center for Disease Control. Now, those disabilities could be visible disabilities. And again, a lot of times we can see mobility challenges, but many of those are invisible disabilities, whether they are allergies or you have, again, diabetes or some other type of chronic illness that is not visible when you look at someone. So all of that is taken into consideration. And that's why we have to have these types of conversations to make sure that we're considering the needs of everyone who may visit our facilities. So let's start off with talking about what's the difference between being sensory friendly and sensory inclusive. So as it relates to sensory friendly means that you're designing an environment that has accommodations for, again, people with disabilities or people with sensory challenges. An example of that is when you host sensory friendly evenings, and we do that during our peak season, June, July, and August here at the Detroit Zoo. So we do have sensory friendly evenings, and during those evenings, we turn down the music, we turn up the lights, and we, again, those things that typically will trigger someone with sensory challenges, we try and take those things into consideration. But again, typically it's evening hours or early morning hours that these events are held. When it comes to being sensory inclusive, that means that you are designing your events, you're designing your performances, you're designing the entire space with these sensory challenges in mind. So it creates a welcoming and supportive environment that is not limited to specific hours, for example, 3 to 7 in the evening, or not limited to a specific location on a date or time. So that is the primary difference between those two. And as we'll talk about in some slides in just a moment, being sensory inclusive means that it benefits everyone and not just smaller populations that you are trying to cater to and provide those accommodations. There are also on the slide some tips for being more inclusive. And this is something that we often talk about and provide in our trainings that we do annually as it relates to becoming more welcoming and inclusive at our institution. So it's always good to greet the person who has the disability or who has the sensory challenge. The tendency is, for example, if you see a wheelchair user, that someone might typically speak to their caregiver instead of the person who's the wheelchair user. You want to make sure that you're greeting the person and not just their caregiver. People with disabilities don't like to be considered invisible. They're right there. You can speak to them, you can engage with them, and that's what we encourage you to do. So just remember to not just greet the caregiver, but also greet the person. It's also good to use what we refer to as person first language as opposed to disability first. And just an example of that is saying a person with a disability versus calling them, again, some antiquated terms, crippled, lame, deformed, and those types of things. So you can say a person with disabilities or people with disabilities, a person on the autism spectrum, and use that type of language, which is considered person first. And that just means that you're considering them as a person, as an individual, and not just identifying them by their condition. Next up, we're going to talk about those sensory categories that I mentioned to you. And there are 8 sensory categories. I'm going over the ones that are a little more common first. So visual, again, being able to see and interpret the surrounding environment. And you'll notice that there's a photo right there. And this is a photo of one of our restaurants, which is called Table 28. And you'll notice on the picture that there is some yellow paint that is right along that curve area. And that is called yellow contrast painting. And the reason that we do that is sometimes it's hard to distinguish, particularly for individuals who have low vision. It's hard to distinguish between where the concrete is, where it stops, where it begins. So the yellow contrast painting helps it to stand out. So you can see as you're stepping down where the step is and where the concrete is. And that's just one example of how we enhance our environment visually. Next is auditory. And auditory simply means the ability to hear, perceive sound waves, and interpret whatever you're receiving as meaningful information. And for that one, we have a picture of our train. Many people love taking a ride on the train here at the Detroit Zoo. And again, being able to hear that whistle from the train, letting you know that it's about to take off, or even being able to hear the instructions, keeping your arms inside at all times and things of that nature. That's a part of that auditory experience that we want to keep in mind. Olfactory, that is the sense of smell. And of course, we have a picture of a skunk there because we know that skunks have a very unique smell that some of us have had the privilege of engaging with. So olfactory just refers to the sense of smell. Again, being able to detect and identify whatever those molecules are in the air. As we're developing sensory inclusive or sensory friendly activities and events, these are some of the things to keep in mind. Where are there strong odors? Where do we need to, again, let people know that this might be a smelly area versus a quiet area versus a headphone zone, and using that type of language so they know what to expect. And if their child or anyone in their party has some sensory challenges, they know this in advance and can prepare for that. The last sensory category on this slide is tactile. And tactile really is that sense of touch. Again, being able to receive information from the pressure or the vibration that is against the skin. And in this photo, you see what is referred to as tactile paving. And if you notice in your neighborhoods or maybe in the place where you shop, you might see some of this tactile paving on your sidewalks, particularly as the sidewalk is going down into the street. And those little dots, sometimes the pavement is yellow as it is on this picture. Sometimes it's a pinkish orange color, but those dots on there actually send a message to the visually impaired. Sometimes you have people who are visually impaired and or blind who are very independent and they know how to navigate their own space. And this tactile paving helps them to navigate the space. Those dots, which are called truncated domes, actually let them know, whether they can keep going straight along this line and it's a safe space, Or if it's a different design, it'll let them know you're coming close to the curb versus you're about to enter into the street. So each of those domes, even though for able-bodied individuals, it looks like just a bunch of dots, it actually sends a message to those who have visual impairments. For the last four sensory categories, the next one is gustatory, and this is really referring to that sense of taste. So it is your body's ability to be able to tell the difference between something that's salty, sweet, sour, bitter, or savory. And again, some people have allergies. We need to know about that. And some people, again, just they might need something salty or they might need something sweet. Where on our campuses or where on our sites and at our location can they find these types of things if it was needed in an emergency situation? The next three categories are not as popular. They're outside of those five senses that many of us are familiar with. And the next one is interoception. And this is when you get, again, sensations from inside the body. Your body is telling you that you're hungry, you're experiencing pain, it's too cold, it's too hot, or whatever emotions that you're feeling. And one of the things that we'll talk about in a future slide is the feeling thermometer that's inside of our Culture City sensory bag. There's actually a feeling thermometer that, for example, if you have someone who's nonverbal, they can point to that feeling thermometer and let you know what their needs are, whether they need a restroom, whether they're too hot, too cold, or if they have something else that they need to communicate. So that's interoception. And really, this is what the body is telling them that's going on. And we want to help them to be able to communicate that so that we can assist them with whatever needs that they have. Vestibular is the next sensory category, and this is, again, awareness of what's going on around you. Movement, balance, and coordination that's being communicated typically from the inner ear to your brain. Now, if you know someone or if you've ever experienced vertigo, that would fall into this category. So that spatial orientation, or again, the awareness of what's going on, what I refer to as from the inside out. So internally, what's going on with you? Are you dizzy? Are you losing your balance? What's going on? That falls under vestibular. Whereas proprioception, which is the last of the 8 sensory categories, this is your body's awareness as far as your position in the space around you. This is more external, which is why you see the little boy there, on the balance beam or going from one thing to the other. And we know our young people like this, jumping here, jumping there, and exploring their environment. And that's what this refers to, your position in the space around you. And this one is more external. So again, sometimes you have sensory seekers. A lot of times we talk about, again, people with sensory challenges, but some people are sensory seekers. So they want the loud spaces. They want to know where they can jump and climb and experience whatever it is that you have to offer. And that really falls under that proprioception category. So I just mentioned our Culture City sensory bags. The Detroit Zoological Society is a certified sensory inclusive location through Culture City. And that means both the Detroit Zoo as well as the Belle Isle Nature Center has these sensory bags available. The sensory bag includes the noise canceling headphones, which are these, you see the orange in the top left corner of that photo, the fidget tools, which are those 3 items at the bottom of the bag on the right-hand side, the VIP lanyard, again, all of our guests are VIPs, but especially those who have sensory challenges. And then also the feeling thermometer is the top right that I just mentioned. On one side, it lets you know how you're feeling. On the other side, again, you'll be able to point to it if you need a restroom, a water fountain, or things of that nature. In addition to those sensory bags, we also have the weighted lap pad, which is what's at the bottom left-hand corner, as well as the strobe glasses. So one of the things we also have here at the Detroit Zoo is the 4D theater. And the 4D theater, again, is a sensory experience, but sometimes people need the additional glasses to be able to block out the flashing lights and things of that nature. So we have the weighted lap pad and the strobe glasses, in addition to the sensory bag that's available for anyone to check out while they are here on site. We also, in 2022, introduced the Sunflower Program. And the Sunflower Program is a program that is a discrete way for people to identify if they have hidden disabilities or not. You'll notice that I'm wearing my green lanyard. The green lanyard are for those who have a hidden disability. We provide these free of charge to our guests. We also provide them to our staff. as well as to our volunteers. So anyone on our campus will be able to get a Sunflower Hidden Disability lanyard. I mentioned the green being for those who have hidden disabilities. We also have the white lanyard that has the sunflower, and that is for people who are supporters of those who have hidden disabilities. Many times for our special events like Dream Night or Sensory Friendly Evenings, and I'll talk more about those in just a moment, we have caregivers who come with, again, the person with sensory challenges, the person with hidden disabilities, and they want a lanyard as well. So we have the white lanyard for those who are caregivers or those who support those with hidden disabilities. And then we have the green lanyard for those who actually have hidden disabilities. Like I mentioned, it's a discreet way of being able to say, hey, I may need some additional assistance. Or for staff who have the personalized card, it also has their emergency contact information in case anything should ever happen. The Sunflower Program, we were actually the first at the Detroit Zoo to have the program in the state of Michigan. It is now gaining popularity, and you will find them at many airports and other cultural institutions as well. So once you get your lanyard, you can wear it anywhere and be able to, again, enjoy some of the benefits, but also be able to receive the assistance that you need wherever you travel. So we're going to talk a little bit about accessibility. So starting it off, don't want to assume that everyone knows what accessibility means. So accessibility includes the quality of being understood or appreciated, again, not being invisible, meaning that something is easy to obtain or easy to use. It is about being easily reached, entered, or being used by people with differing abilities. For example, one of the audits that we do here at the Detroit Zoo is making sure that it requires no more than 5 pounds of energy to be able to open a door. If a door is heavy when you pull on it and it's heavy to open, typically that means it's out of compliance because it should not require more than 5 pounds to open that door. But again, how easy is it to open it, especially if it's not an automatic door? It also includes, or accessibility also includes, the quality of being easy to approach, reach, enter, speak with, use, or understand. And one of the things I'll talk about in one of the next slides is that includes not only our physical spaces, but also our programs. So whether it is being able to have closed captioning on a hybrid presentation, or whether it is making sure that any PowerPoints that you have has a font size that people can read, or the contrast is something that people will be able to distinguish. It's not a color that you can't really see when you look at it. Those are just some examples of what to consider when it comes to not only physical accessibility, but also programmatic accessibility. So as it says at the bottom, accessibility means doing things better so everyone benefits, not just making special programs or special entrances for those who quote unquote need it. So I always like talking about the innovations of diversity because there's so many things that we enjoy in society that are, again, innovations that were initially designed for people with varying disabilities that everyone tends to enjoy. And the first one we'll talk about today is the electronic toothbrush. Now, many of us have electronic toothbrushes, right? So the electronic toothbrush actually dates back to the 1920s. The first patent was filed in 1937, believe it or not. So the first one was called Multident, and that is the picture in the top right corner. And it was designed to assist people who have mobility issues. So those who have limited fine motor skills, they couldn't actually brush their teeth. So they created this toothbrush to be able to do it for them. So again, fast forward all these years, the electronic toothbrush has gone from being just for those with limited mobility to, again, being promoted by dental professionals around the globe. Next up is personal video chat. So many of us enjoy FaceTime. We enjoy video conferencing like Zoom and other platforms, but this actually started back in 1964 with the first picture phone call, and this was between deaf students. So students between New York City and Chicago wanted to be able to see each other, sign, and communicate with one another. And hence we have the first video call or picture phone call that was created. Now, personal video chats have come a long way since 1964, and many of us, like I mentioned, enjoy FaceTime, Zoom, and many other platforms where we're actually able to see people now and communicate with them in that way. Personal texting. Many of us have cell phones, and we get text messages from companies and family members and friends all day long, but many of us remember when there was no text messaging. So text messaging actually goes back to starting in 1975 with what was called a TTY, or a teletypewriter, and this was developed for the hearing impaired. It was a special device that allowed people who were deaf to be able to communicate with one another by typing messages back and forth. So we go from, again, this device, the TTY, or the teletypewriter, in 1975 to, again, enjoying text messaging today. Next up is speech synthesis. So this machine that you see here is from the 1950s approximately. We can go back even further than that, where people were trying to build machines to, again, emulate human speech. So sound like we sound when we're actually talking. So moving from, again, the 1003 AD specifically to the 1950s, where you have a speech synthesis machine. Again, same concept, being able to take human speech and produce it. So this machine that you see on the screen, this actually helped people to, again, specifically helping the blind to be able to hear a book that they could not read with their eyes. So fast forward from this device in the 1950s to what we enjoy today, being audiobooks, and even word processing programs like Dragon Dictation and others that are able to take your speech and type it out for you. Even Google has products that will allow you to speak into the microphone and it types it out for you. But this initiated with, again, people who had varying types of disabilities. Next is the speech recognition, which is slightly different from speech synthesis. Now, Thomas Edison is credited with inventing the first dictation machine, and that was back in 1879. But speech recognition devices have advanced a long way since that time. 1962, we have the IBM shoebox that could understand 16 English words. And then 2008, Google launched its voice search app. And then from there, we enjoy things like Siri and Alexa today. So being able to recognize speech, being able to say things and they hear it and produce, again, whatever it is that you're able to produce. And those who have Siri and Alexa know what I'm talking about. Next up is closed captioning. And again, we're enjoying closed captioning on the presentation today. So anyone who needs to be able to read and follow along can do so at the bottom of the screen here. But closed captioning, the process of really displaying text on video at the bottom of the screen, is something that, again, goes back to the 1970s. It was created for the deaf community because they could not hear what was being said. Typing it out or having it presented in a text format for them helped them to be able to enjoy, again, programs, presentations, videos, and things of that nature. And of course, many of us know that closed captioning is now widely available, whether you're watching TV, whether you're on your mobile device, whether it's for movies or other streaming services. So I'd love to hear in the comments if you knew about any of those innovations of diversity. So you can just go ahead and type in any that you were aware of or any that surprised you if you did not know where it came from. So again, I like sharing this quote after talking about those innovations of diversity. Necessity is the mother of invention. Again, things like automatic doors, electronic toothbrushes, Siri, Alexa, FaceTime, Zoom, all of these things came about because there was a specific need for the disability community. And many of us enjoy those things now, whether or not we have a disability. All right, so continuing the conversation and talking about promoting accessibility. The work that I do in diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility has specific laws that support the work. And I won't talk about all of them because, again, it's a nice list, but I will highlight these three. So the ADA is probably the most popular, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this was passed in 1990, so not too long ago. But the ADA is actually a civil rights law, and it prohibits discrimination against any individuals with disabilities, specifically as it relates to jobs, schools, and transportation. Now, when I talk about the ADA, of course, ADA has specific compliance laws, but I always like to look at ADA as the basement. The basement meaning the ADA should be where you start. It should not be where you, again, end up or where you think that, again, just checking this box is enough. So always going back to how can we be more of a welcoming and inclusive location? How can we consider the needs of those people who may be visiting our sites? So that's the ADA. Many of you may not be familiar with the WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is actually a part of the Rehabilitation Act. And again, there are specific things that are now a part of that compliance that allows us to think about programmatic accessibility for the people who, or how can we create presentations, websites, apps, and those things so that people with disabilities can access it as well. So anytime you see a website, an app that has multiple languages that you can click on and change the language, that falls under the WCAG. If you think about how you can increase the font size or have something reading to you what is on the screen, so screen readers, all of that falls under the WCAG, which is an international standard that makes web content more accessible to people with disabilities. Again, it benefits everybody, which makes websites and apps much more user-friendly. And then the EEOC is the last one I'll share, and that is a part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, actually. And under the EEOC, there are 8 protected characteristics. So that means that you cannot discriminate against or retaliate against anyone under these 8 categories. So those 8 categories, as you see on the screen, are race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, as well as genetic information. Those are the 8 protected characteristics. And again, it is illegal to discriminate against or retaliate against employees, for example, based on any of these 8 categories. I'll take a brief moment to say, if you have questions about any of the things that I'm sharing, please go ahead and drop it in the comments. I will check the comments once I stop sharing my screen, and then there will be also time for questions and answers at the end, because I know I'm covering a whole lot of information and some of it may be new to you. So just to highlight some of the ways that we incorporate accessibility and inclusion here at the Detroit Zoological Society, I did mention our sensory-friendly evenings, and the 2 photos that are there are from our sensory-friendly evenings this summer. So at the top, you'll see we had a bubble blast activity. And then at the bottom, that is a photo from our animal biofacts. And you can see that there are some actual animal skins and things of that nature that people can come up and touch and feel, and again, learn more about the animals that are represented with those biofacts. So for sensory-friendly evenings, again, reducing the music at the gate, reducing the volume and the lighting, reducing any other effects that would impact people who have sensory challenges, making sure the sound is down on what's referred to as our experience trail. This past year, it was Dinosauria. So you have, again, these huge structures and there's sounds coming out and it's moving and things of that nature. And then also the music on the carousel. These are just some considerations as it relates to those sensory-friendly evenings that we had. And then we were very fortunate this summer to have a doctoral student in occupational therapy that came and did her capstone project at the Detroit Zoo. And she's actually the one that came up with the sensory activities. So she had 5 sensory activities for both the June and the July sensory-friendly evenings. And those are where we captured those photos from. Next up, we have senior days. So we have 2 senior days, 2 Tri-County senior days that are on the schedule every year. And our Tri-County Senior Days are free for seniors ages 62 and older in Oakland County, Wayne County, as well as Macomb County. And they can also bring 1 adult guest. So whether that is a caregiver or another family member or friend that they want to bring with them, our seniors ages 62 and older can get a free admission on that day, as well as bring an adult guest with them. So for our 2 Tri-County Senior Days this year, 1 in June and 1 in September, we had over 5,000 seniors who participated and got free admission that day. When you come for the Tri-County Senior Day, we have trams available, and that's the photo on the left. So we have trams available. You don't have to walk the entire zoo. They have trams that will take you around to be able to see different sites here at the zoo. And then we also, of course, have our wheelchairs and ECVs available. But this year, in addition to the Tri-County Senior Days, we partnered with the City of Detroit, and the City of Detroit has 7 different districts. So we partnered with the City of Detroit to be able to bring seniors out from the different districts within the City of Detroit. So each month we've been bringing out up to 50 seniors from those different districts, and we provide the transportation. So we have an ADA chartered bus that goes and picks the seniors up from a specific location. bring them here to the zoo, and they're here at the zoo approximately from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We provide them with lunch. The ECVs and the wheelchairs are free for them. And again, they get to come and spend the day at the zoo. And it's been really well received. We've heard from some of our seniors that some of them have never been to the zoo. Some of them have not been to the zoo in 30 years. So it's a very good opportunity for these seniors, and again, making wonderful memories. Next up is Dream Night. And if you have not heard about Dream Night is actually an international event that takes place, I want to say it's 26 countries and 6 different continents. This actually started in 1996 at the Rotterdam Zoo. And this is an international event that is free to participants who are from families who have children with chronic or terminal illnesses. So everything that evening is free to them. We've been very fortunate to get sponsors to support our Dream Night event. So again, families with children who have terminal or chronic illnesses are able to come out. The food is included. All of the rides and adventures, experiences are included. And these are just some of the photos from that day. We do have our mascots out that day. They're able to go to the 4D theater and watch a short film. There's a backdrop where they can take photos with their family. Again, the food is all included. So whether they want pizza or a salad or ice cream or whatever it is, all of that is absolutely free to those families that evening. This year, we had 729 participants that came out. We do cap that event at 1,000 participants, just so that you're aware, because we want to make sure that not only do they have, again, the full zoo to explore, but it's not too crowded and they're able to, again, maneuver, get around, whether they are wheelchair users, whether they have strollers, or whatever that looks like for them. And again, we've gotten some great feedback from that experience. So I did want to just share some additional accessibility assets that we have here at the Detroit Zoological Society. On the far left, you might be wondering, well, what is that? It looks like a table. Well, it kind of is. This is an electronic adult changing table. So this changing table, we actually have a new ADA restroom now, and the electronic changing table is the main feature of that ADA restroom. So this electronic changing table, it's in the down position, but it also raises up. So, excuse me, so that it's up and out of the way. There's a control panel on the wall so that you can raise it up when it's not in use and raise it back down when it is in use. But it also goes up and down to be able to raise the height or lower the height for whoever the caregiver is that's providing the diapering needs. So we have this is the only electronic one on site right now, but we have 4 other adult changing tables on site as well. We want to make sure that whether it's a parent with an infant that has diapering needs, or whether you're a caregiver to a parent or someone else, there is space to be able to take care of those needs while you are on site. Let's go to the top. So the first picture on the top is of our trail chair. I mentioned our experience trail, and this past year it was the Dinosauria trail because we had the Dinosauria exhibit. And again, for our wheelchair users, because that's a gravel trail, it tends to be a little more difficult to get through with a manual wheelchair. Well, we now have that trail chair available. So you just have to sign a waiver, absolutely free of charge. You can use this trail chair to take your loved one through that experience trail. Next to the trail chair is our lactation chairs. And you might be saying, well, what's big about that? Well, we just wanted to highlight this because this year we switched from, again, a traditional cloth recliner in our lactation space to these updated seat covers. That way they're much easier to sanitize and to disinfect to keep that space nice and clean for our nursing parents. I already mentioned the yellow contrast painting. That's at table 28, which is one of our restaurants. And we actually have that contrast painting around the curb of multiple locations where we have, again, eating, seating, and things of that nature so that we reduce as much as possible the trip hazards and things of that nature. The bottom left, you see another chair. You might be wondering, well, how is that different from the trail chair? Well, that is actually an emergency chair. And that chair is available in 2 different locations on site in the event of an emergency evacuation. So say, for example, far be it from me to want that to happen, but in the event of an emergency and you have a wheelchair user who's on the 2nd floor or somewhere else, this emergency chair is able to get them from their location to safety. So we have two of those safe emergency chairs available to be able to transport people in case of emergency. Next to that, we have our accessible picnic benches. So we do paint our accessible picnic benches in blue so that they stand out from our traditional picnic benches. The one on the left, the wooden table, is last year's model. I'll say it that way. That's the model that we previously used. And it has an extended flap on the end so that a wheelchair user can pull right up to the picnic table and enjoy their lunch with their family and friends. But over time, the wooden table starts to sag, as you might suspect. So this time and moving forward, all of our picnic tables will be this, I'll call it aluminum. I don't know the material off the top of my head. I apologize, but it's a much sturdier material for the accessible picnic tables. And even though it has that extended end on each end, you can actually pull up on the ends of the table as a wheelchair user and be able to utilize that space and to enjoy your lunch with your family and friends. And then finally, the last picture on the bottom right is of the Go logo. So in Q4 of 2022, Michigan was one of the, I think it was 13 states that adopted the Go logo. And you'll notice that this is different from what was previously referred to as the handicap logo or the accessible logo. And that is because the disability community wanted to make sure that, again, the emblem that supported accessibility indicated that they were not stagnant, but they were mobile. There are things that, again, the disability community, particularly wheelchair users, can get out there and do. They're not just standing in one place. They're not just, again, immobile, but they're active and they're a part of the community. So this new Go logo indicates that. And now on at both of our locations, all of the accessible parking spaces have been updated with that new Go logo. And then as our signage needs to be replaced, it will be replaced with the new Go logo as well. So those are just some of our accessibility assets. And that is actually the end of my presentation. So if there are questions, I am happy to take your questions, or if there are comments, I am happy to take those as well. Let me see where I can stop sharing. All right, so if there are questions, I'm happy to take your questions. And I know that was a ton of information, but I'm looking forward to getting your feedback. Let's see, there's some things in the chat. All right, I did not know about the origin of the electric toothbrush. I had heard about TTY machines. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Ellen. All right, lots of information I was not aware of until now. I appreciate your feedback as well. Thank you, Catherine. I love working on Dream Night. Wonderful. And yes, it's an event that is held at many, many zoos around the world. Dream Night's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much. It is really, you know, if you've ever worked a Dream Night event, you don't leave the same. Being able to get that feedback from the parents, being able to see the expressions, and again, just it's such a good feeling to know that you're providing those opportunities, not just to the children, which is a huge part of it, but also because I'm a parent, because I'm also a grandparent, I understand about the need for respite. Being able to go together as a family and not having to have someone watch the person or the child that has chronic illness or the person with disabilities, but you can all go and enjoy the space together. That is, again, unparalleled. So yeah, Dream Night is a wonderful event if you have not been a part of it. Typically, it's held in June of each year at many zoos and aquariums around the world. So thank you for those comments. Impressive array of available resources in Detroit Zoo. Thank you so much. I absolutely love the work that I do. I do have a daughter who has hidden disabilities. I have my own hidden disabilities, and I was a caregiver for my parents before they passed. My dad had Parkinson's. My mom had dementia. So I cared for them. They were wheelchair. Well, my mom was a wheelchair user. So I understand this on a very personal level. And that really helps fuel the work that I do for, again, not just the disability community, but in all that we do around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. All right. Thanks for the information. Great opportunities for the disability community. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. Well done. Thank you for mentioning Dream Night. Our zoo used to do that event. I hope they can bring it back. All right. Do you know how we could pursue the sunflower program at our zoo? Excellent question. Thank you for that, Diane. So actually the sunflower program, you can go to the website, or if you're on social media, they do have an Instagram account. So I'll say this, Sunflower Hidden Disabilities, which is what you can type in Google, and again, the website will come up. It started in the UK, and then it has now gained popularity in the US. So make sure that when you look up Sunflower Hidden Disabilities, it is the US page, because it is both UK and the US. And then once you go on the US page, it'll let you know, again, the types of memberships that they have. There is an annual subscription fee, and then you could order as many products as you want to for the zoo. We do have a staff person. It's a part of her responsibilities to kind of track the inventory, make sure that we stay on top of having products available at our different locations. But yeah, it is absolutely available for your zoo. Just make sure you type in Sunflower Hidden Disabilities and make sure you go to the US site to find out more information. Can we get the Sunflower link for our Symbiosis newsletter? We can make that link available, but again, if you go to Sunflower Hidden Disabilities and make sure you're on the US site, then that is the link that you can share. Really good information. Thank you so much. One of the protected classes was genetic. Could you please elaborate? So with genetic information, with any, I'll say this, with any employee information, with any medical information, particularly with employees, it is confidential information. And just as an aside, your medical information, whether it's FMLA or otherwise, should not be kept in the employee file. And those who work in human resources are aware of this. The medical information must be separate. But genetic information is one of those protected characteristics because, for example, if you are a person who has any type of disability and you request reasonable accommodations, that is confidential information that should not be shared. So if a colleague or someone else said, hey, did you know that this person is dealing with such and so, that's a protected characteristic. They cannot share your medical information, genetic information, whatever that looks like with anybody else. So that is a protected characteristic. That's just kind of, one example of what that can look like. So I hope that answers your question. All right, look for the US page on Sunflower Hidden Disabilities. Absolutely, thank you for sharing that. All right, I'm going to be quiet, and if there's anyone who wants to come off mute and ask any other questions or make any other comments, we welcome you at this time.
This is Ellen. We'll give everybody a minute to gather their thoughts and ask a question. I don't think we're going to have any further questions. We have recorded this, so we're going to be able to put it as a resource for the members of our organization. For some were working today, and some are traveling or, under the path of the hurricane, that they'll be watching this later. So there's a lot of good information here. I know I plan to watch it again myself, so that I can understand everything a little better, because it will help me in my work life and daily life to review it again. So I'm going to do that. We have a comment from Phoenix Zoo that Gloria is very impressed with the amount of resources that the Detroit Zoo devotes to making the site accessible to all. So that is a very nice compliment. So thank you for all that you do to make the Detroit Zoo shine for everyone. So it is appreciated. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and your time with all of us today.
Yeah, I do see another question, but before I get to that question, I do want to share for those who are watching the replay on the slide that is about me, there's a QR code. So if you have questions or want to connect, that QR code will give you my information. It has both my email address as well as my office phone number. So if you're going back and watching the replay, you can scan that QR code that's on my About Me page if you want to connect with me if you have additional questions, and I'm happy to answer those. So Gloria's question is, how is your funding created? Excellent question. So when my role was created, and it started as a director of diversity and community engagement in January 2021, one of my non-negotiables in accepting this position was that it came with a budget. So that was part of my non-negotiables because again, it's great to do this work, but you will not be very effective if you don't have a budget to be able to implement some of these items. I was very fortunate that we have a budget that's a part of our overall operating budget to be able to not only implement new programs like Sunflower and others, but also to maintain our Culture City accreditation, as well as purchasing the accessible picnic tables and things of that nature. So it is a part of our operating budget here at the Detroit Zoological Society. But I will add this because the electronic adult changing table that I mentioned, that actually was a $25,000 grant from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So there are some grant funding opportunities that allow us to do the work that we do, but overall, this is a part of our operating budget here at the Detroit Zoological Society. Is there an effort to take this information and programs to European countries? Excellent point. And actually, I'll say yes, but I'll say yes and. So the yes and is I do make presentations to international organizations. So for example, I am a part of an international, what is it called? The International Diversity, Communities, and Nations Conference. That's an annual conference that's held in different countries around the world. And this is the type of information that I share at those conference presentations. So not only am I sharing presentations locally, regionally, nationally through AZA, but also I'm connected with an international diversity community that we share this type of information. And when it comes to that, I not only talk about the AZA and the EEOC, which is relevant to us here in the United States, but there is a United Nations mandate. I'll just say it like that. I don't remember if it's a law or whatever, but again, there are things internationally that can be shared that, again, support this same type of work, but on an international level. So yes, and I do share this information in those capacities because I do have speaking opportunities at other locations. So thank you for asking that. All right, that looks like it's it. So thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be able to share this afternoon. And again, if you have additional questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share.
Okay. Thank you so much. We
All right.
appreciate you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.